Okay, so now that I've looked at every charm and made some rough proposals, it's time for the final round of charm reworks, fixing issues with my original designs and implementing some of your ideas as well. If you haven't already watched the other episodes, a link to the Charm Reworks playlist can be found at the top of the description. Watching the other episodes will greatly help contextualize the changes I make in this video. I'm happy to be able to say that I managed to fit all of the finalized charm reworks into this one video. That was a lot of work though, so it'd be much appreciated if you considered subscribing. If this video gets enough support, I might consider rebalancing the charms from the Pale Court fan expansion. With all of that out of the way, I'm Holland and these are the Hollow Knight charms rebalanced. First up, the Wayward Compass. Although I'm generally not a fan of charms that have no use in combat, this one does get a free pass. It just fits so well into the game in its own unique way, so no changes. The same remains true for Gathering Swarm, however the auto pickup feature would apparently ruin some challenge runs. That's a shame, but I think I have to put quality of life over player created challenges. If you wanted to disable this feature, you could always patch it out with a mod. Sorry challenge runners, no changes. A lot of you thought my redesign of Stalwart Shell was poorly balanced. However, in a rather humorous turn of events, no one could seem to agree on whether I'd made the charm too good or completely useless. I'll take that as a compliment, although I remain agnostic as to whether 30 seconds is actually the right duration. With that said, no changes. Alright, so for charms with multiple solutions, I'll go ahead and pick the solution I ended up liking the most. In the case of Soul Catcher, that's the option to lower its cost to 1 notch while decreasing the extra soul gain from 3 to 2 soul per hit. I like this option better because it makes the charm more unique compared to Spell Twister. Speaking of Spell Twister, in the first episode I screwed up a comparison between Soul Catcher and Spell Twister and failed to correct it properly in the second. As people astutely pointed out, you can't compare a percentage increase to a percentage decrease. This comment sums it up nicely, and I think I'll just outsource the math to Brian here because I'm too afraid to make any more mathematical claims. I believe the long and the short of it is that Spell Twister is more powerful than vanilla Soul Catcher because it decreases soul cost rather than increasing soul gain. Thankfully, we don't have to worry too much about that because I went with the other solution anyway. Checkmate, math nerds. No changes. As expected, most of you lost your minds over me nerfing Shaman Stone, Strength, and Quick Slash. And while I'm usually more in favor of buffing rather than nerfing, these 3 charms are currently so powerful that keeping them as is was out of the question for me. I'll get to Strength and Quick Slash later on, but for now I'll have to stand my ground on Shaman Stone. I do think reducing the damage to 25% was the right move, although I definitely have a few things to clear up. Firstly, Shaman Stone still increases the size of spells. I don't know what I said in that video to make half of you think I removed that feature, but that was never the intention. I think it's an awesome secondary effect, so let me just spell it out clearly on the charm description here so none of us get confused. Secondly, some of you argued that Spell Twister is now clearly better than Shaman Stone and at a cheaper cost too. But I'm not sure that's as apparently obvious as you might think, not only because Shaman Stone also increases the size of your spells, making them easier to hit and double hit with, but also because, all things equal, an increase to spell damage is better than a decrease to the cost of spells. Why? Well, because a lower cost means you have to find the time and space to cast those extra spells, while Shaman Stone just buffs the ones you'd normally cast. And thirdly, a few of you didn't like the fact that I standardized the percentage increase amongst all the spells to 25%. That's because currently, Shaman Stone increases each spell by a separate amount. Now, listen, I really tried to understand why Team Cherry might have made that decision, but I just have not been able to come up with a good reason. If one of the spells deserves a larger increase to damage than the others because it's underpowered, then why not just increase the damage of that spell baseline? Why does it have to be through Shaman Stone? That's what I truly don't understand. If you think you have a good explanation as to why Shaman Stone needs to increase the damage of Vengeful Spirit by only 33% while boosting Howling Wraiths by 50%, feel free to comment it down below, but for now, I'm proposing no changes to Shaman Stone. This commenter suggested a buff to Soul Eater to make better use of the increased soul gain, which I really liked. So the final version of Soul Eater now looks like this. 3 notches. Gain 6 additional soul when striking with the nail, decreases the casting time of spells by 30%. That also makes the charm a lot more unique, which is awesome. Okay people, get ready for this change. I reverted Dashmaster to costing 2 notches, but now also made it reduce the cooldown rate of your Shadow Dash. It's honestly quite an astonishing testament to my genius that I managed to come up with this idea all on my own. In fact, it really surprised me that none of you thought about this before I did. I guess that just proves that I'm a little ahead of the curve, eh? For Sprintmaster, some of you pointed out that you can only purchase the charm after fetching Sly's key from the Crystal Peak, meaning you already have access to both the dash and the wall climb. That makes me a lot more comfortable with allowing the charm to also function while in the air, which is the change I'm making. Also, some of you wanted me to mention all of the different charm synergies, which I can't promise I will, but for Sprintmaster and Dashmaster, all I would do is round up the synergy bonus from 39% to 40%. Although synergies are cool, I'm generally worried that they softly force you to put different charms together, which discourages build variety. Some of you had an issue with me buffing Grubsong, but I'm honestly not quite sure why. A few commenters exclaimed excitedly that you can now overcharm against Fail Champion to get over 60 soul every time you take damage. Wow, how awesome guys, and it only cost me 4 masks and my firstborn. What an amazing stroke of genius. No changes. Oh boy, this one's gonna be very controversial. Grubberfly's Elegy only triggering at full health is apparently a Zelda reference. Call it immunity to nostalgia because I never played Zelda, but I'm gonna have to value gameplay higher than reference quality here. But that's not all. I've been thinking a lot about what's actually fun about an ability that gets weaker as you lose health. Taking damage can be a conscious decision, that's why Fury of the Fallen works, but not taking damage, that's not a choice. That's what you're always trying to do. So you can't really decide to stay at full health, and the more damage you take with a charm like Elegy, the less fun you're gonna have, because one of your charms is losing its power. I just don't see the value in that playstyle. I mean, playstyle? That doesn't even make sense. Your playstyle is not taking damage? Well, you and the rest of us, buddy. And perhaps more importantly than anything else, Grubberfly's Elegy majorly favors skilled players who can stay at high health for longer, while inadvertently punishing casuals. So let's just get straight to it. Here's the new Grubberfly's Elegy. When striking with the nail, fire a projectile that deals 50% nail damage and collects soul at 50% efficiency. I lowered the damage from 70 to 50% to compensate for it no longer decreasing as you take damage. Additionally, I made the beams collect soul, although at half the regular rate. And finally, 2 hidden changes. Firstly, the beams no longer apply knockback to you, meaning you can't pogo with them. J Prince made a great comment on why this is probably the better option. And secondly, the sound of the beams should definitely change. It's quite intrusive at the moment. Listen, I know these changes are drastic, but just really think it through for a moment. What's fun about rewarding you for staying at full health? And how does that not just screw over weaker players while rewarding the pros? Anyways, moving on. Fragile and Unbreakable Heart I was pretty happy about. Some people think charms that grant masks are overpowered, some think the opposite. I'm probably somewhere in the middle, so no changes. Now, Greed is a wonderful example of why I need you guys to keep me in check. In episode 2, I made the effect also apply to boss chests, which was just such a terrible idea, encouraging you to have to go fetch greed or feel like you're missing out when opening a chest. The charm no longer affects chests, although I kept the geo deposit increase because I thought it pretty inoffensive. Instead, one user suggested making bosses drop geo if defeated with greed. while another wanted it to increase the drop rate of Colosseum Geo. I find those ideas to be much more appealing than what I had originally suggested. Both options provide a proper risk-reward dynamic, something Greed has never really had. Basically, Greed becomes a charm you can equip for boss fights or Colosseum runs to increase your reward at the end, but at the cost of having to beat the challenge with 2 less notches. Love it. For strength, I realized it needed big changes, so I'm removing the damage increase entirely and instead adding in 8 seconds of bleed. Not a real suggestion. Okay. I cut that part. For strength, I'm making the 25% damage increase also apply to nail arts. Otherwise, no changes. Spell Twister is the charm we're measuring all the other charms against, remember? No changes. I'm on the side of Steady Body being extremely underrated, so no changes. While I thought my redesign of Heavy Blow was pretty cool, I understand that it also does encourage spammy gameplay and might be a bit overtuned. Therefore, I'm restricting the stun effect to only be applied on successful hits with Great Slash and Dash Slash. Duration is still only half a second. Dead Clover pointed out that Quick Slash probably increases your attack speed by around 47%, which does seem more accurate than the 32% I suggested in episode 2. Since that episode, I've also become convinced that Quick Slash is harder to use than Strength, because you can't always utilize the attack speed increase while Strength affects every successful hit with both the nail and now also nail arts. So even though Quick Slash does increase your soul gain in addition to your damage, I am buffing the attack speed increase from 25 to 30%. A lot of you suggested keeping the high attack speed but either lowering the damage or soul gain to compensate. Lowering soul gain didn't really sit right with me, because I don't like how that limits your choices to supplement your playstyle with spells and healing. And while I think lowering the damage could actually work, I prefer the simplicity of just increasing your swing speed by a set amount. I like what I did to Longnail, so the only change I'll make is also having it apply the range increase to nail arts. Same goes for Mark of Pride, making it work on nail arts as well. Although I am also removing the ability for Mark of Pride to let your nail arts fire the Mantis Lord's projectile when combined with Nailmaster's Glory. While I think that ability is super cool, I'd rather keep these reworks as simple as possible. Although I won't exclude the possibility of this feature being reintroduced in a future Charm Forging episode. So definitely stay tuned for that. Link below if you haven't watched that series yet. It's where I design custom charms for Hollow Knight that could... Okay, that's it. Quite enough of that. Could you stop shouting yourself out every 5 seconds? Gosh, that's so annoying. Fury of the Fallen. Wow, I went overboard here. This might have been the most overpowered redesign I suggested in the first 4 episodes. So here's the brand new Fury. Increases nail and nail art damage by 25% at 3 masks, 50% at 2 masks, and 75% at 1 mask. That does mean I am also reverting the charm notch cost back to 2 notches. Now, this charm is still very powerful, but hopefully not as powerful as in my first rework. I also think this change makes Fury retain a stronger identity, still requiring you to be at very low health to be active, however not having such a harsh trigger that only the best of the best can effectively utilize it. Anyway, next charm. I provided 2 different solutions for Thorns of Agony, and I'm sticking with the less complex option to match the elegant simplicity of Hollow Knight. No changes. It's funny, I was so captured by the idea that Baldur Shell was a terrible charm that I never realized I could accidentally end up over-tuning it, but I think I probably did. That's why I'm returning the ability for the charm to break after 4 uses, however, allowing it to be fully repaired after successfully using focus. The charm also remains at 1 notch. For Flukenest, I went ahead and scrapped both of the options I had originally presented, settling for a solid middle ground. Comparing this version to the vanilla Flukenest, it fires 1 less fluke before you get Shade Soul. That's because the number of flukes then properly doubles once you get the upgraded version, keeping in line with the regular Vengeful Spirit. Moreover, the charm now costs 1 less notch, and each fluke deals an additional point of damage from 4 up to 5. And remember, I'm considering any hitbox shenanigans fixed. So I don't want to hear anything about how multi-hits break this charm. I'm balancing it around each fluke only being able to hit once. For Defender's Crest, no changes. For Glowing Womb, I wanted to do no changes, but I'm not sure I can. The main worry I have with mainstreaming summoner builds is that they are quite non-interactive. So I wanted to give Glowing Womb some sort of trigger that makes it more interesting than just giving extra free damage. Weaversong and Grimmchild already do that. So I made the hatchlings spawn only while using focus. While using focus means you don't have to actually finish the heal. Rather, the hatchlings are continuously summoned until you stop using focus, although only up to a maximum of 4 at a time. I don't know exactly how often a hatchling should spawn, but perhaps something like every 0.5 seconds would make sense. That allows you to summon around 2 hatchlings per successful heal. Like the original, the charm still requires soul to function. However, I think this is a much more fun and interactive way to go about it. And you still get the healing from using focus, so it's probably quite a powerful charm now. Moving on. Some of you wanted to increase the power of quick focus to 40% or 50%, and while I don't think those suggestions are outlandish, I'm gonna keep it at 33. That's mostly a result of the arguments I made in this video on healing, which boiled down to me wishing focus got a permanent buff in the late game, similar to spells getting their shadow upgrades. If focus were to receive an upgrade that made it more powerful in the late game, I think quick focus would fit into the meta just fine. And even today, a lot of people seem to still love using it, so no changes. Deep focus. Let's bring that penalty from 25% down to 20%. I like that better. Otherwise, no changes. Lifeblood Heart, no changes. I think this charm is pretty cool now at 1 notch. Lifeblood Core, no changes. For Joni's Blessing, I'm reducing the notch cost to 2. A lot of you argued that at 3, it's, at best, only providing a very slight benefit over Lifeblood Core while inflicting a huge penalty. Good argument, and I do agree. For Hiveblood, I should specify that taking damage still resets the healing, but no changes. For Spore Shroom, I went for the option to make it cover the whole screen. Although I hope everyone understands that I never meant to say the cloud covers the whole screen. The cloud is gone, it's just that every enemy within sight is infected with the Spore Shroom disease. 5 people also suggested making the damage scale with nail upgrades, which I like because it improves balance across all stages of the game. I know that's hard to justify lore-wise, but in this case, I once again have to value gameplay higher. Although it's a valuable criticism and I wish there were a better solution. So now the damage of Spore Shroom is always equal to twice your base nail damage. Base just meaning excluding stuff like Strength, Fury of the Fallen and Blood Brew. Oh boy, I know, Sharp Shadow was a bit overbuffed. You couldn't just let me have this one imbalance, could ya? Reducing the damage from 2.5 times nail damage to 2 times nail damage is a good start, but I don't think it's quite enough. That's why I've also decided to remove the synergy between Sharp Shadow and Dashmaster that used to increase the damage of Sharp Shadow. It's a cool idea in theory, and I know that you guys love your synergies. But first of all, as explained earlier, I have a generally skeptical attitude towards powerful synergies. And second of all, given that Dashmaster now decreases the cooldown of the Shadow Dash, you still have plenty of reason to combine the two together. Shape of Un is in a pretty good place, although I missed a huge opportunity to remove the stuttering effect that occurs when you finish a heal. That's gone now, a nice quality of life improvement. If you want to buff nail arts, not Nailmaster's glory. No changes. For Weaversong, no changes. For Dream Wielder, I removed the ability for you to walk around while charging the Dream Nail. Now, it's not that I don't like the idea, it's just that I wanted these changes to be a bit more minimalistic. If you actually wanted the Dream Nail to act more like a nail art, which I kinda do, I'd encourage implementing that effect baseline, not through Dream Wielder. Other than that, no changes. I agree that Dreamshield had become a bit too powerful, and that's why I'm bringing the damage of each shield back down to 1 times nail damage. However, I am also altering a bit of text to enforce the fact that all projectiles should be blocked. Now, I'm no expert on exactly which projectiles currently ignore the shield, because unlike some of you, I'm actually mentally well enough to not use this terrible charm. But I just don't like the ambiguity of the charm only working against some projectiles. I'm sure there's a technical reason why not all projectiles are blocked, but I'm in the wonderful position of being able to suggest things that might be hard to implement. So in a perfect world, I think Dreamshield would block all projectiles. Grimmchild, no changes. Carefree Melody, surprisingly, no real changes. I think my updated version is a pretty fun idea. All I would do is add the ability for the charm to treat you as if you were at one mask while the shield is down, activating charms like Fury and False Catalyst. And if you're wondering how the new effect fits with the name Carefree Melody, it's because you're being carefree, careless even while the shield is down. Bit of a shoehorn, but I think it makes sense. Kingsoul, no changes. I'm glad I gave it a slight buff, but I don't want to overdo it. Void Heart is Void Heart, we're still all good here. And finally, Voidsoul, no changes. And that's it. That's every charm in Hollow Knight, reworked, then reworked again. This video took a long time to make, so I'd really appreciate it if you considered liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And I promise you, I'm not done rebalancing charms. Perhaps I'll do Pale Court next. Now go watch this video where I design custom charms for Hollow Knight, or listen to me complain about the worst mistake Team Cherry made. Or just get off YouTube and start working on those exams you're putting off. I know you too well, man. You think I shouldn't also be writing my bachelor's thesis right now instead of making this video? God bless procrastination. And thanks for sticking all the way through.